Hello and welcome back to the ACSC Podcast. Thank you all again for the support on the last episode. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. It's another one of Waz's good mates and ex-player at Northley, a big club there. I think we may have a bit of a upcoming collaboration in some sort with them in a few weeks, so watch out for that. But again, back with another guest this week, and as last week, I'm not going to be doing much more talking, so I'll pass over to the co-host Warren and I'll let him introduce.
Evening, guys. How are we? As we got one of our special guests for today, Rob Panting, aka Nobsy, a man of many talents, a comedian, cricketer, footballer, and all good guy.
Very kind of you, Warren. Hi, Charlie. How you doing, gents?
Right, not bad. Yourself?
Excellent. Yeah, all good.
Right, we'll start with your ultimate six-a-side, including yourself.
Yeah, I've made room in the team for me. So I've based it on Premier League. They've had to have played in the Premier League, and I've tried to go across all eras. Obviously, I'm the exception when it comes to having not played in the Premier League, winning District Premier League, but not the EPL. So in goal, I've gone for Edison. I don't think there's anyone better that I've seen with the ball at his feet.
Yeah,
I'll play at the back. So formation is 1-3-1, not including the goalkeeper. So Edison in goal. I'll try and start the play at the back. Three midfielders. Hopefully you'll all appreciate. JJ Okocha.
No.
Yeah.
Paul Scholes.
Yeah.
And here's a City player, but a City player that I don't think you would probably automatically think of. Georgie King-Clancy from the mid-90s. Hopefully some of you will remember him. If you don't, Google it.
That's probably way past Charlie.
Well, no, yeah, hopefully there's some film that still exists of him playing, but yeah, Georgie King-Clancy. And then up front, I've gone for Matt Letizia.
Yeah, there he was, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, try and get the ball off of those.
What, you doing yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm the weak link.
Right, I was speaking to one of your friends, Stu, trying to get a bit more information about you today, about your playing career.
I thought you might.
I started off at Clanfield as youth.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess probably like most players, you've got aspirations that you can play to a decent level. I guess for me, and actually my best man, Richard Trigg, who Warren will know as well, at my wedding referred to my sporting career sort of ending when I was about 15. I played, played at Clanfield in their youth team up until 15 or 16. Before that, I guess I was reasonably successful. I played in the Whitney District rep team for several age groups, captain of the team up until the age of 15, 16. I mean, never really thought I would go much beyond Hellenic League. Had a couple of games for Clanfield reserve team, which they had back then. So that's how long ago it was. And then beyond that, never really sort of progressed. I guess at school as well. Bartholomew School in Ensham, played in the first 11. I think most schools' first 11 are year 11, year 12, year 13. I think there was a couple of year 11s, maybe me, Triggy, and Simon Hole from year 11. I think we played in the first team from memory. We're the only year 11s that got in the side. So I think I was a good footballer, probably between the age of 12 and 16, and then didn't really improve at all. Got slower and slower. Played at Freeland for the next 15 years till I was about 32, and stopped playing when I was 32 to take up refereeing.
If you missed a club out there, because I got told that you played for Ensham as well, which I never
I did play for Ensham. Sorry, yes, I did play for Ensham. Yeah, had a season at Ensham under 16s, so the last year of youth team football. So played at Ensham then, and then straight into playing for Freeland. I'm just trying to think if there was any other clubs in there as well. Tower Hill became Clanfield. So I played at Tower Hill for a season as well, and then whatever it was, 3 seasons at Clanfield. Probably if most people watch me play, I'm not very quick at all. So if I'm up against any pacey striker, I'm screwed, basically. But I used to, in fact, I was going to try and bring it along, a screenshot from a cup final that we had for Clanfield. And, you have the player profiles in there and it describes, what you are as a player. It had Rob Panting likes to play creative football, which I always thought was quite, that's how I like to sort of play football. Anyone can lump the ball forward. I like to see good players across the pitch, and that includes, those playing in defence as well. So I've always quite liked, Rio Ferdinand, PK, obviously John Stones. It's really good to see him coming back into some good form now. Good players on the ball. I mean, even to be honest, you're an Arsenal fan, aren't you, Charlie?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's necessarily the greatest defender of all time, but I've always quite liked David Luiz as well. I think he tries to play football in the right way.
That sort of what you say is a ball playing centre back. He's got the ability to play with his feet as well. I think, like you said, mentioned there, John Stones is one I think a lot of people do say is sort of the modern day ball playing centre back, sort of looking the likes of PK. But I think with David Luiz is always one that he doesn't have the defensive ability to do it, and that's the biggest problem for him.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's what's been really good with John Stones recently, that he's matched his ability on the ball with
100%.
a much better way of defending, which, obviously we'd seen a couple of times with England, just some real horrific mistakes that he made, and he seems to have cut those out. I think Diaz obviously coming into the City teams really helped him, and I think even Edison has said, actually he really enjoys playing with John Stones, and he's pleased that he's effectively become Pep's probably one of the first names on his team sheet now, which is great. But yeah, I'm not trying to align myself with someone of John Stones' ability. I'd love to be able to play like John Stones, but yeah, I always like to see players on the ball that are at the back and they're looking to, play a good positive ball into midfield. Those are the types of players that I enjoy watching.
All right. Yeah, but like you were saying about John Stones, that must be hard now with the likes of obviously Diaz and Laporte. Hard to get into that squad. That obviously with Pep, that must be well hard to even think about who's going to be starting out of those 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm one of those people that think if you're playing well, you deserve to stay in the team. Now, obviously, in the way that football works now, it's very rare that you see, the same 11 going from game to game. I think City have got 3 really good defenders now that they can alternate and set up as they see fit going into a particular game. And even, I don't think he's necessarily a standout defender, but a defender that can do a really good job. They've still got Nathan Ake in their squad, and he's barely appeared. I think I don't know if he's been injured or, but he's barely appeared anyway. And I can't see him necessarily getting back into that squad, into that starting 11 anytime soon. But yeah, I guess to cover that point, Pep does a really good job in keeping his squad happy, which I think is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
I think it's also like what you're saying there with Laporte. I don't know if you saw the game yesterday, but even I think Gary Neville was touch on it. He's sort of saying that Laporte had all the hype of this player that was going to become arguably one of the best centre-backs in the world, but his form sort of dropped off a little bit. And John Stones has kicked on massively this year to sort of become the man that Pep likes. Like I said, that ball-playing centre-back. Pep always wanted that. And I think with Ruben Diaz coming in, he's one of the best centre-backs I've seen in a long time for his age. Next to him sort of just partners it so well.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't. I mean, my fantasy football team, I've got Edison in goal, I've got Stones, and no, I haven't got Diaz, I've got Sterling in there because, you know, he's been playing very well. But, I mean, the points that Stones and Edison have been
racking up,
bringing into my team have just been ridiculous the last few weeks. But, yeah, you're right, Charlie. I think that the last few games in particular, they just don't even look like conceding chances, let alone goals.
No. It's one of them. I think I was saying to Warren before yesterday, I think if we had the, I would say, confidence to go at them yesterday, I think with Saka we could have done something. But the squad confidence at the moment is so low, we didn't trouble them at all until about the 70th minute when we actually got a bit of confidence on the ball.
Yeah, I've got a mate that I work with who's an Arsenal fan, and I was saying to him today, actually, the last few weeks I would be encouraged if I followed Arsenal. You can see, you know, some good young players in there: Saka, Tierney, Smith Rowe. I mean, even I was saying Willock at Newcastle at the moment. You know, he's actually putting in some good performances, and hopefully, if he can continue that, you know, he's going to force his way into Arteta's thoughts next season. So I think, you know, Arsenal aren't going to suddenly appear as, I hate to break it to you, Charlie, but I don't think they're going to appear as, you know, title contenders for the next couple of seasons. But, you know, I think they're certainly moving in the right direction, I feel, you know, and that's probably not a popular view with Arsenal fans, but looking at it objectively, I think so.
I was saying to you, I think it's one of them that I was saying to you before. I think yesterday sort of summed it up that, yes, we're going forward, but the confidence isn't there. I think Arteta has got us playing better defensively. But yesterday there was chances from about the 20th minute when we actually started getting the ball. That's when we should have been pressing them. But we literally seemed to be happy just sort of getting that possession for a bit of a respite from their onslaught of going at us. And I think that's the difference. I think over time it will come. Like you said, we're 3, 4, potentially 5 years away from challenging for anything like the league yet. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, completely agree.
Right. I suppose, obviously, at the end of your career, I did hear another story. It was a naughty word used in it about you were said to a referee because you went down injured, and you said something about sociable, and you had a red card.
Yeah, so that was for Freeland over at who were we playing? It was either West Whitney. It was at West Whitney Sports Ground. So it was either against West Whitney or FC Mills, one of the Whitney teams. And actually, we'll probably come on to it later when it comes to refereeing. But they had a stand-in ref that game, so it wasn't an official ref. It was one of their club members refereeing, and I got injured, and I was sort of like 5 or 10 yards inside the pitch, and it was quite a bad sort of cut to my leg. It wasn't a very nice challenge, and basically the referee was asking me to roll off the pitch, and I was saying to him, "Look at my leg, you know, I'm not making a big deal out of it." And I can't remember what he said. I said something to him, and he said something like, "That's not particularly sociable comment." And I said, "Well, here's a sociable comment for you." And I think I told him to F off, and he sent me off, and I rolled off the pitch. I rolled off injured and sent off as well. That was the only time I was sent off. I was probably booked maybe 7 or 8 times in 14, 15 years of playing men's football. I was never one really to moan massively at refs or get into fights on the pitch or anything like that. I'm one of these people that turn up to enjoy playing football, and actually, if you're playing against a team that aren't interested in playing football, then I'm not interested in playing against a team like that. So actually, yeah, like anyone, I used to moan at a little bit at refereeing decisions, and not always agree with them, but very rarely did it get to that level where it turned into sort of dissent or foul and abusive language. It was always like a silly little comment, probably on a couple of occasions, and then my other yellow cards were a couple of fouls or the usual things that you get.
So going on to you currently becoming a ref, that must be quite a hard thing normally players hating refs to becoming one.
Yeah, I mean, enough people dislike me, Warren, to see why I wanted to become a ref, but no, I stopped playing. So like I said, I played 14, 15 years at Freeland, won a few leagues, won a cup, got to a couple of cup finals. So I had I enjoyed playing. One thing that used to really frustrate me when I first started playing men's football was, and you guys would see this as well, when you've got like 40-year-old blokes just like taking up a place in a team, and you've got like a 16, 17-year-old player just like getting 10, 15 minutes at the end. And, given that the vast majority of football that I've played has been village football, I don't really agree with that. And I didn't want to be one of those players that carried on playing until I was like 40 and stopped young people coming in.
Yeah.
And I was having a few issues with my back as well. So I play on a Saturday and Sunday. I literally couldn't get out of bed at all. I was having real problems with it. So I thought, let's just take a break and just give up football. I play cricket in the summer, as you know, Warren. But I just thought, no, let's stop playing football. But I was always quite intrigued about what refereeing would be like. And I thought, well, I know quite a lot of the players in the Whitney District, having played, 15 years in the Whitney District and a bit in the senior league as well. And I thought, I get on with most people. Let's give it a go and see what happens, and actually see how far it takes me. So, I thought, no, let's give it a go. The worst thing that I find are those players that will constantly moan at refs, but then perhaps not, when they stop playing, they're not willing to run the line or have a go at refereeing themselves. So I thought, no, I'll give it a go.
How have you found it, such as obviously, well, we all know how well loved you are around this area. Everyone knows you. Do you find that you get a more respect on the pitch being a ref of that? Yeah,
without sounding big-headed, probably. I guess just as a disclosure, my sort of back issues, I've not refereed for the last year, but with COVID anyway, because of that, I've not missed many games. So I've not registered for the current season, taking a bit of the year out, but I refereed 4 or 5 seasons before then. And I do think knowing players puts you in a good position as a referee. I think having played at that level, you sort of understand how a game should be refereed. So, you're not refereeing in the Premier League or the Championship. So there are going to be the occasional bad challenge going in. You've just got to manage the game how you feel it should be managed to keep the flow of the game going. And I think that, coupled with me knowing quite a few of the lads that I refereed, probably did put me in a stronger position. You notice those referees that come in that either haven't played, are perhaps taking it up for the first time, or not knowing people that they are refereeing. They find it really difficult to build a relationship with players during a game. So I think you're right, Warren. I think it does. I felt comfortable going into my first few games refereeing, knowing that I knew quite a few of the lads that I'd be refereeing.
Yeah, because it's great on that. Like, I think it was probably maybe 3-4 years ago, there was a Banbury League referee that must have done something wrong, and he must have got relegated to the Whitney District. Northley A go out on the pitch. One of our strikers, Craig Orne, before the game goes for a wee behind a tree, and the ref already trying to get a card out to send him off. The game hadn't started.
It's, and actually when you do the referees course, so if you want to become a referee, all the local FAs run these 2-day, I think they're 3-day courses. It starts on a Friday night, you go on a Saturday and a Sunday. You then have to do 5 games that you're assessed on a couple of games, I think, from memory. But essentially, you go in for this. You learn the basic rules of the game, laws of the game. Sorry, that's one thing. They're not rules; they're laws. And I pick it up every time I watch Rio Ferdinand say rules on BT Sport. Every time he says it, I've not tweeted him yet to tell him. Yeah, I think that's the first thing that the referees or the referee tutors say to you is don't create a situation for yourself. So particularly at local football, where there might be someone walking on the pitch having smoking a cigarette, and someone nipping behind a tree to have a quick wee, and all this stuff. Just don't get involved in it, because you're only going to create a situation for yourself. And the tutors say to you as well, don't blow the whistle if players aren't expecting you to blow a whistle, i.e. don't see something that hasn't been seen by other players. So, little shirt pulls and stuff that no one is going up for. Don't draw attention to yourself by constantly pulling players up on that. So those are the first things that they say to you. Try and referee with an element of common sense, which I think is fine for lower league football, village football, probably going up into sort of Hellenic and Southern League. But obviously, once you start to move into professional football and you've got cameras in place, there's something I'll come on to later, I guess. The common sense has gone completely out of the window when it comes to Premier League refereeing and Championship refereeing, in my eyes, where VAR's in place, because they're refereeing too closely to the letter of the law, and there's no wriggle room for common sense whatsoever. The prime example being the Mike Dean incident a couple of weeks ago, which I know you boys have discussed. And
favourite referee of all, Mike fucking Dean.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, what's happened to him since, is deplorable. But he does draw attention upon himself, and that incident at Fulham the other week, no one was. It was a shame actually, because I think the guy, was it Lee Mason that was VAR for that game? I think.
I can't remember who it was the other night now. I think it was, because I think he was the one also involved in both incidents that sort of got pulled up. He was VAR for both of them.
Yeah. But and that's the problem. I think once you bring a referee to the screen, you're almost inviting the referee to perhaps see something that hasn't actually happened. And Mike Dean should have just ignored it and said, no, it's clearly an accidental elbow that's happened here. And it would have just passed over without any problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the first things that you're told as a referee, particularly at local level, is just referee with common sense. And actually, it shouldn't take you too far away from, or it shouldn't take you too far wrong from how you should referee a match.
It's interesting what you're saying now. Don't draw attention, because I don't know if you guys saw the other night. Was it Darren Drysdale? I think it was the Ipswich game.
Yeah.
As a prime example of him, I don't know if you saw it, Warren, that it was Ipswich, and he sort of squared up to the player towards the end of the game. And I think he's now been suspended because of it. But what I say is that a matter of whether players have clearly got in his head that much?
Yeah. I think they would. It was either on Talksport or on the podcast. They were saying that clearly that, like you say, Charlie, something had happened prior to.
Yeah. And
that.
what I'm saying is, for referees at that level, it's not often I've seen any of them sort of come to that point where he lost it completely. Alan Judge.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you're right. I think, Alan Judge, the player, obviously something had happened prior to that incident happening. My guess is that he'd been on at the referee all game, and Drysdale, the refs, obviously just lost it momentarily. Part of me looked at that and thought, actually good for you for standing up to a player that's clearly just been, biting all game, and you've stood strong, and you've not addressed the issue how you should have done, but actually you made it quite clear who the boss is in the game, which I don't think is a bad thing, but particularly at professional level, you can't act like that. It was unfortunate. It really was.
It must be like when with every single ref, whatever level, it must be hard day in, day out, every week, is to get slaughtered by players by giving them jip all the time.
I think that's the main thing that you have to deal with as a ref. The one thing that I'd like to think that I'm quite good at is speaking to the players, but there is a fine line. So it used to frustrate me when there are a couple of refs that are on the circuit that love to just talk to players all game. And it's like, oh, come on, mate, just, you're here to referee the game. You're not here to talk to us. But there is a good point that a lot of players make where, so long as you explain a decision and you do it honestly, then actually most of the players on the pitch are actually on your side.
Yeah.
So, for example, what I would tend to say, if there was a free kick or a penalty that I'd given, and I had a couple of players come and approach me, and they would say, "Oh, ref, that's really well." Obviously, I'd say it a lot more firmly than this, but bad decision. You've got it wrong. And I would say to them, "Well, I may have got it wrong, but from the position that I've seen the foul, I think it's a free kick, or I think it's a penalty." And actually, most players go, "Yeah, all right, fair enough." And so long as you say, I'm trying to make a decision to the best of my ability and an honest decision, most players will accept that. There are exceptions, obviously, where you've got players that are just not interested and they're there to cause you trouble, and they'll keep on at you for 90 minutes. But the vast majority of players, I think, if you say to them that I'm trying to make an honest decision here, I get one look at it, I'm seeing it at a different angle from the 22 players on the pitch. Most players are actually quite reasonable when it comes to that. The other thing, which is very good from a local football point of view, is if you do go into a game and it becomes apparent that it's quite an edgy game, and a couple of bad tackles going in there, if you're refereeing on a park where, again, it is the 22 players and a few spectators, and the odd dog walker coming through, you have got an opportunity to sort of stamp your authority. And by that I mean, if there's a foul early on in the game, you don't necessarily have to go and caution the player, but you use your voice in a way that leaves it in no doubt that you're informing a player, and not just the player, but all of the players on the pitch, that you're unhappy with a particular tackle, because you're so audible across the field that players suddenly think, oh yeah, actually no, we can't get away with that. The referee's made it quite clear that that's his approach during the game. So I probably referee 120, 150 games across sort of kids level, men's football, a little bit in the senior league, and I've been on the line in Hellenic matches as well. But I've not cautioned. I've never sent off a player in 120, 150 games. I've not had to send off a player, and I've probably not cautioned that many. Maybe I think the most I ever did was 3 in a game, I think. And you could argue, in some instances I should caution players more, but you try and referee the game through your communication, I think. And I think most players, particularly at a local level, appreciate that more, as opposed to someone turning up and just, like you said, Warren, just getting on someone's back even before the game starts. It's just not, you're not going to position yourself in a good way during the game.
The things as well, I think, obviously, with this standard we've got around here, with talking to them first, they certainly know you're going to probably do something afterwards. And who wants to go pay a £16 fine for a yellow card each week?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's, to be honest, gone are the days where, referees wouldn't put bookings through. They come into the changing room after the game, and it's happened to me on a couple of occasions where I got booked, and the ref would say, "Oh, don't worry, I won't put that booking through." Most referees are told, no, if you book someone or you send someone off, you put it through, and like you say, Warren, it's that can be a whatever pound fine it is nowadays for a booking or a sending off. There is a deterrent in there, and not just deterrents for financially, but suspensions as well. They're there for a reason. But as a referee, my ambition wasn't to go into a game and just start handing out yellow cards for the sake of it. I try desperately hard when I referee a game not to caution people. Sometimes it's impossible to do it, but actually, if you're reasonable and the players understand that there's a bit of give and take, then actually they respond to that quite well.
Anything else, Charlie?
I think that covers most of it. I think we're going to get to a point where, even though you are ref, we're going to have to say the dreaded VAR word and have a bit of discussion about that, because I think we touched on it a few weeks ago, obviously, when it was sort of at the high point of, obviously, with the Mike Dean incident. And I think we can even sort of mention the Liverpool-Everton game the other night. The talking point was obviously the Calvert-Lewin penalty, which, in my opinion, I don't think it was. I can see the reason why the ref has given it, due to the fact, obviously, where was Calvert-Lewin meant to go? Arnold was there on the ground. I can see why he's given it. But, like I think you said, Warren, as a Liverpool fan, you're going to be rather pissed off at that situation.
Yeah. I've already spoken to Stuart, so I know what Nobsy's reply to this one.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things with that. Personally, I'm in favour of VAR. I think probably there's a couple of others on this podcast that perhaps I think you guys you can see parts of it which are good, but then you're big fans of maybe referees taking more control of the game, and you just agree with the decision if it's given.
I am a big fan of the way VAR can change the game. I think the problem is, I think we sort of mentioned it a few weeks ago, is that in the UK, or especially the Premier League, we don't seem to be following the way like in UEFA are doing it, where they've seemed to got it down to the T or pinnacle of it, where we seem to be trying to go in this different direction, which isn't working.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there are elements of VAR that I would tweak. So one thing that I've not heard, so I'm not going to claim, I'm going to claim this is an idea from me. And it may have been mentioned elsewhere, but I've not seen it sort of published. In cricket, obviously, with, and I know cricket's a completely different game, so I try to avoid lining those two sports together. But with like LBWs in cricket and it's mainly the LBW law, there's often umpire's call that comes into a situation when it comes to if the batsman's hit outside the line or if the ball's just clipping one of the stumps, they'll say that it's umpire's call. Therefore, if the umpire's giving it not out, even though it's hitting the ball's hitting the stumps, it remains not out.
Yeah.
I'm amazed with the offside calls that there's not a margin of error within the lines that they create. I mean, we're all aware that there's clearly differences between we've not got the technology in place to demonstrate categorically when the ball leaves the player's foot.
Yeah.
And that split second can create a difference where the line falls as to whether a player is deemed onside or offside. So what I would do is introduce, like, I don't know whether it's like a 50 centimetre aspect either way. And if it falls within that 50 centimetre sort of boundary, whether onside or offside, you go with the assistant referee's decision. And I think it just then, it creates some credibility around the system. And it also means that there's some integrity in the assistant referee's decision as well, because they've just become completely, what's the word I'm thinking of? Obsolete. You know, they're not in the game at all now.
I think in that aspect as well, I think it's sort of where that gap is. I think with VAR coming, it sort of made the advantage go into the defender's hands instead of more of an attacking sense. So sort of having that leeway sort of opens up the game a bit more to have those players, the likes of Vardy, who play so close to that last man. And these players who thrive on that little gap that used to be there of getting that marginal bit, that opens that sort of game back up again, because there's players like that who can't get away with those split decisions anymore. Having that leeway could make a big difference to that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just gives some credibility back to the assistant referees as well, because actually I've not got any stats to back this up, so I'm talking purely from watching all the games at the moment, which is great. That actually, when the assistants do make a decision, they're actually right quite a lot of the time. So by adding in that leeway, I think it just brings back some further credibility to them. I think the point that you made earlier with regards to the Calvert-Lewin incident. Sorry, Warren. I think that's a case in point where VAR remains subjective. Yeah. However you look at it. Personally, it's interesting that you said you didn't think it was a penalty, Charlie. I think the initial sort of contact where he's gone over his head, and then Trent has lifted his foot up afterwards.
It's a hard one.
Completely.
And I think that's why it's so hard, because obviously I think the more you see it, the more it does look like a penalty. So obviously I can see why everyone's initial reaction was, how was he given that? Because you can arguably say, how was Arnold meant to get out of the way? But then the argument is, why has he gone to ground in the first place? That opens it up there as well. So it's just one of them. But I think with the whole VAR subject, it just opened the door that no one's seen another incident. It's just more ground to sort of jump on the bandwagon side of things.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the other aspect that I've heard mentioned quite a lot is, miking the referees up, or referees doing interviews after games. And I think it's like the Australian Football League. They do it quite often. They mic up the referees, and it's fine because, let's be honest, football in Australia is about their fifth most popular sport. They might have a couple of blokes from the outback waiting for a referee after a game. They're not going to have a load of hooligans that unfortunately our game in England still attracts potentially hounding referees, which is not what it's not very practical, in my opinion, that happening in England. But you're right, when you look at some of the other major European leagues, so I watch quite a lot of the German football, they do it so much better than what we do.
This is just, that's for me, is like, obviously I like watching, even though we're not in it anymore. The Champions League for me is a massive thing of watching it, and it's just that it's like obviously it's the pinnacle of football, but you can see for a reason why is the referee in there is substantial. And I think sort of thing is interesting to see your thoughts. Is obviously I was saying last time is we sort of had a golden age of refereeing a good few years ago, obviously when we had the likes of Howard, Webb, etc. When if you looked at FIFA's list of the elite refs, most of them were English. And you sort of look now, are we sort of trailing behind and not bringing through a good crop of refs at the moment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, so without boring you with the detail, I'm a level 6 referee, which basically makes me a senior county referee. You start off at level 7, which is a junior referee. In theory, I can referee Oxfordshire Senior League. I can be on the line for Hellenic matches and sort of do the fourth official stuff there as well. But primarily, I've refereed in the Whitney District. I think the further up you go and you start to meet people that are refereeing in Southern League, National League, even on the line of National League, there are some really good referees in there that quite a decent percentage of referees that have stopped playing at a decent level and have gone into refereeing. And I think those are the guys to watch, hopefully coming through in the next few years. I think to answer your point, Charlie, in terms of the elite referees at the moment, I always feel Michael Oliver's a very good referee. I think he commands good respect. He's quite decisive. The main one that springs to mind with him is the Champions League match a couple of seasons ago. Was it PSG and Real Madrid where, who's the goalkeeper? Buffon was in goal for PSG, and he was face to face with Michael Oliver, and Michael Oliver just, sent him off straight. Just didn't put up with any of his, clear dissent. And I quite admire that in referees to make those decisions in high-profile games. But you're right. I think probably when you look at Howard Webb, although interestingly, you read his book. I'm sad. I have read his book. He's got big regrets about the 2010 World Cup final that he refereed, and was it Van Bommel that did the
yeah.
It should have been a red. There's refereeing games sensibly, and then there's just decisions that you have to make. So I think he has big regrets there, but again, had good authority about him. Whereas unfortunately, I think a few of the referees now, they don't have that element of authority, which you really do need. I think Kalina's the obvious one, going back a few years, where forget some of the players on the pitch like Roy Keane and Vieira, those that really put themselves about. Kalina would be if he was refereeing the game, Kalina would be the guy that you'd be most wary of.
Yeah.
As we were saying, I'm pretty sure we were saying a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about VAR, another option we thought of is do what the rugby do, where you can actually hear what they're talking about for the refs and the TMO. And then I think a lot of supporters would actually have more of an understanding where the referee is coming from.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. The bit that I was referring to earlier in terms of like miking up the refs during the game and talking, you couldn't do that because, as we all know, players swear, referee swear. That's going to be very difficult. But I do agree that I think if there's an element of describing the decision and hearing the conversation that's going on between the on-field referee and VAR, I don't think that can do any harm, really. Because again, going back to what I said earlier about refereeing local football, if you're explaining your decision to the player and saying, look, this is my view, this is how I've seen it, it might not be a penalty or a free kick, but from the position that I've seen it, I think that it is. And actually, the great thing, obviously, with Premier League is you've got so many different camera angles that you can hopefully see what happened 99 times out of 100. And I don't think having some supporting, comment from the VAR I can't see it being a negative at all. And like you say, Warren, it helps players to understand what's happening. Like you say, rugby use it, cricket use it. Yeah. When there's a catch, for example, if the ball is close between the bat and the pad, you can hear the umpire talking through the decision, saying, there's a clear spike when the ball passes the bat. I'm going to give it out. So it's there's definitely merit in doing it. I agree.
Do you think as well with especially in recent weeks, the VARs people need to start telling the refs to have a proper look at the cameras, because even obviously you're saying it was a penalty for the Liverpool game, he literally glanced at it and went straight back over. Yeah,
I think he's probably scared of Klopp, to be honest. Wondering what his reaction would be. No, you're right, and that's another little trade secret with referees as well. I don't think you necessarily see it too much at the higher end of football, but they want you to sell a decision. So your tutors say to you, it's important that you sell a decision in a positive way. Yeah. So, if you're giving a free kick as a referee, you can't be sort of hesitantly blowing your whistle or giving a signal. You've got to be really firm in pointing to, and strangely enough, that's one thing I think the one referee that does it very well at Premier League level is Mike Dean. He really does sell a decision, and it's a positive decision. And I think, I know, Warren, you go and watch North League a lot. At that level, that's where you've got the referees that are ambitious and looking to push on into sort of the National League level and then hopefully go into the Football League. And if you've got, even at North League, obviously you're getting, 100 people watching matches there?
Got about 150, 100 to 150, I think they normally get now, which ain't bad.
No, the beer's obviously cheap now there.
It's good as well.
Yeah. But those referees, you want to make a positive decision. And again, at that level, if you've got a referee that's really sort of weak in the way that they're giving decisions, spectators pick up on it. And those are the games that then become really difficult for referees. You've got to be strong and you've got to really be quite positive in the way that you make decisions. And that's something that if you're going into refereeing, you even if it's an absolute howler of a decision, you've got to believe that it's the right decision that you're making, because you do earn the respect of players over the longer term.
I think as well, if you start questioning yourself, then you're going to make a lot more mistakes and that ain't going to go well for you.
Oh, completely. And then there's been games where, I've been hesitant and you lose it for the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. It's similar to actually when you play a game. If you have a bad touch, which happened often enough with me, being playing at the back, you often make a ricket and it costs you a goal. If you go and make a poor decision or you hesitate on a decision, you've then got the players on your back for a period of time. You've got the spectators on your back. So you've got to try and make positive decisions from the first minute, whether it's, you're not pulling players up for, needless fouls, but, if there's a clear foul, really make a positive decision, almost go and speak to the player, be really positive and be firm at that point. And actually it puts you in a really good position for the rest of the game. The games where I felt I've not refereed as well as I could have are those games where I've been a little bit hesitant. I've not stood up to players that have clearly, there's banter and, I don't mind the occasional, F off ref, you do make sure that you address it, but it's not an automatic booking all the time. If you blow the whistle and you're firm, actually that gets the message across. It's, there is a line, the whole sort of, if you're called a cheat as a ref, for me, that's I might be bad, I might be incompetent, but I'm not cheating, and you have to address something like that. But I think, for those people that, I can't imagine that there are too many budding referees at the best of times. But, if you want to go into refereeing, that's my thought, that, you've got to be firm in your decision, really sell it if you make a decision, so everyone knows that you're making a good, positive decision. And like I said at the outset, don't make a decision when a decision's actually not being sought by players. Like I say, the worst games that you see are the ones where referees are making decisions where there's just not a decision to be made. So just don't make one.
Yeah.
Anything else, Charlie?
I think that covers that stuff.
Right. On to your beloved Aston. Are you quite happy with what they've done this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think yesterday, the game against Leicester, it showed how much Villa rely on Grealish. I think he would get into most Premier League teams now. Maybe not City. I think he would get into Liverpool side, Warren. I think he would take Grealish now. I think he'd get into Arsenal side, Charlie.
100%.
I think he's a class player. But my main concern with Villa is I think the midfield's looking very tired at the moment. McGinn just doesn't look quite at the races at the moment. Barkley was fantastic the first 5 or 6 games. Obviously, he had his hamstring injury, and I think they were saying his availability coincided with COVID hitting Villa, and his rehabilitation hasn't happened. So he's still finding his fitness, I think, during the games, which isn't ideal at all. Douglas Luiz, I think, is a great player, but he's looking very tired as well. My worry is that I think Villa potentially will lose 2 or 3 players in the next year. I think a team will come in with a massive bid for Grealish to the point where I think it would be impossible for Villa to say no. I genuinely think that I don't get the hype about Mings at all. I think he's just not. I don't think he's a particularly good footballer, in my opinion. Sorry, Tyrone, if you're watching. But I just don't think you're very good, mate. I just see him launching the ball forward towards Watkins, and there's no. He doesn't play the ball into midfield particularly well, in my opinion. The defender that I feel I think he's genuinely one of the best defenders in the league is Konsa. I think he's a really good player, really good defender, good ball playing defender as well. And I can see, dare I say, the likes of your teams coming in for Konsa during the summer. It wouldn't surprise me at all, again, if there's a bid for him. And the other one, actually, there's 2 players I can see potentially being picked up by, not necessarily going, but being challenged with a bid is Matt Cash. I think he's a really good attacking fullback, and Martinez is just. Probably outside of Ederson, I think he's probably been the best goalkeeper in the league. Charlie, he must be chuffed to bits that you let him go.
Absolutely fuming. I was gutted. I was certainly on a massive Arsenal team, my dad as well, and I knew we was going to get offers for him. Obviously, with Leno getting injured, he was just superb for us last year. And I'd rather have let Leno go and keep him, because even with the ball, like you say, Medicine, he can play football as a keeper as well. And another player, is it Taggart you have as well? Is he one of your other fullbacks? Yeah. I like him. I think the game he had against us the other night, he was absolutely class as well. How much do you think you could get for Grealish, realistically? What would the offer be where you would sort of have to consider it?
Yeah, I think you're probably... The players in the league at the moment that probably demand the most transfer fee is probably Kane is... I would say Kane's maybe 150 million really. I'm not suggesting that he's worth that myself.
That's the fee you'd be demanding, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think Grealish probably falls into a bracket underneath that. So maybe 100 to 125. It wouldn't surprise me. I was saying this again to one of the lads that I work with, and he couldn't believe that I said this, but you look at the position as to where Madrid and Barcelona are at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me if they look at someone like Grealish. It wasn't that long ago that, I think Madrid were being linked with Sancho. They're looking for these types of young players that are creative. And you have to say that England, in the last 4 or 5 years, this sort of conveyor belt of good ball playing midfielders and attacking midfielders, Foden, Sterling, Grealish, Maddison, Barnes, Smith Rowe, I've probably forgotten others,
I think, like you said, Nails, I think it's something I wanted to sort of bring up this episode as well, as about England, sort of obviously we've got the potential of the Euros coming up very, very quickly. And I think they were touching on it the other night, I think after their Leicester game with Harvey Barnes, is how hard is it for players like this to push into the England squad at the moment? Because Harvey Barnes has been sort of talking about it a bit as well. He's had a really good season. But when you're going up against the likes of Grealish, Sancho, Foden, how the hell do you push into that side at the moment?
Yeah, it reminds me, maybe not to this extent, but I mean, like, you boys remember sort of 10, 15 years ago when you looked at, national teams like Brazil and France, and there were players that were elite players in the Premier League, and it's not even getting a look into these national teams. And I think, I'm not suggesting we're anywhere near that level, but you're right, Charlie, there's only so many squad places available for England in the Euros, and there are going to be someone like a Madison or a Barnes or
Madison completely
Bellingham. I used to. You mentioned England, and probably I'm one of those people that I would rather see England do well than. I would love to see Villa do well. Don't get me wrong, but I used to be in the England supporters club for about 10 years, and used to travel abroad to watch quite a few games with. Warren knows Jamie Leach as well. So me and Jamie used to go abroad quite often. So I always like to see England do well. I'm a bit worried that Southgate's approach will mean that we're playing 3 at the back. We're playing, if we go into a tournament, we've got Calvin Phillips and Rice playing alongside each other. I think I'm just going to throw the TV out the window at that point, We need to realise that we've got some unbelievably talented players, and really build a team around those guys. And almost, I don't mean to go back to like how Keegan managed Newcastle in the 90s, where we'll score 6 if you score 5, Yeah. But there is an element of that, I think, with England, that they need to build a team that can just pose an unbelievable attacking threat. I think the good thing is we've now got Stones playing well at the back.
Yeah.
We've got, I'm not so sure about Maguire, but he is playing relatively well. You've got Gomez. I mentioned Konza. I mean, for me, Konza has to be given a go. Chris Smalling's been forgotten as well. That's the other one that staggers me. He had a brilliant season at Roma.
Yeah. I think I'm glad you sort of said that about England, because obviously I think it was when I was doing season 1 of this with my other co-host Adil, and I was always one that said I would rather see England win the World Cup than Arsenal win the league, because I've got more into it again the last few years. Obviously, I worked at the FA for about 2 years, so I've sort of been involved in that sort of setup around that side of things, and it's one of them that when England are playing well, there's nothing better watching international football. And I think the last episode conveniently we done before season 2 started was where sort of when we had the really bad results, I think it was against Croatia was one of them, where we're sort of seeing this where you're saying about Gareth Southgate, where he's playing so negative football. He's playing 2 holding midfielders in Phillips and Hendo, when you don't need that. You need the likes of the attacking players in the side, where our talent is going forward. We know we're not the best at defending, like you said. But I think in world football at the moment, there's not many teams. I'll probably say France are up there that have got an equal attack to us. But bar than that, our talent going forward, we won't get a crop of these players for a long, long time again.
No, I agree. I mean, I sketched, probably like you boys, at lunchtime at work, and I sort of sketch out an England team. I think my latest version was, I'm pleased that Pickford's coming back, because I do think he's the best ball-playing goalkeeper, as stupid as that sounds. I think Pope's probably the best goalkeeper that we've got, but I think Pickford does offer you something with the ball at his feet. You just hope that he doesn't have a ricket in him. And I think the last game, again, sorry, Warren, against Liverpool, he played very well. And again, sorry, Warren, I think Trent has played himself out of the England starting 11. I think he will probably, I would probably go with, I mean, it's difficult because Walker's suddenly disappeared. Trippier is too busy betting. And
Reece James.
And Reece James, I guess, I mentioned Cash earlier, but I don't think that will happen. So I think it'll probably be Walker, maybe. Yeah. If you're going with a back four, that is, so Walker, Stones, I think he'll go with Maguire. And I think Luke Shaw's probably in pole position now.
Really good.
Although I like Saka. I do like Saka, but in a back four, probably you go with a Luke Shaw. I'd have one holding midfielder in Rice at the moment. I think, again, Henderson has got a lot of experience, but I think Rice is probably playing better at the moment. And then I would just absolutely go crazy with the remaining, we've got 5 to work with. So I would just find space for Foden, Sterling, Grealish, Maddison. What we call that?
I'll say probably to do it. Yeah, I'll probably have Maddison in the middle with Foden potentially. You could probably have Grealish in there. I think it's a hard one with Foden. I think I was chatting to you, about is that I like him and I think he's probably going to be one of the best players on the planet. But is he ready to start for England at the Euros?
I guess, and I appreciate I'm older than you boys, but and I can barely remember this, but I can sort of remember it when Gascoigne first came onto the scene with England in Italia 90, and similar discussions. Not that I was probably paying any. I was 7 at the time, paying much attention, but obviously seen stuff since then. And I think Bobby Robson was like, do you know what? Actually, there comes a point where if the player's good enough, you've got to find a space for him in the team. And I take your point, Charlie, but I would say he's probably he's one of the best in. Arguably, he's probably England's best player now. I think, or certainly most complete player. I think Sterling, the way he's playing at the moment, is probably most effective player. Maybe.
The thing is that's only recently though, because Sterling, I'd say before last week, has had a bit of a poor season compared to the last few. But he just seems to find his form again just in time for the Euros. I agree with that. I think one other obviously a player we sort of mentioned was Harry Kane. Probably hasn't had his best season, even though he's got a lot more assists this year, goals. Would you say as players looking at likes of Calvert-Lewin, etc. this year, has any of them sort of disrupted his position enough?
I mean, I would definitely throw Bamford into the mix now. Yeah. I like Bamford a lot. I think Calvert-Lewin, I mean, I know he's often described as a sort of alternative striker in that he's a bit more physical. He likes kneeing Trent in the back of the head. That's his approach. But I think he's a very good finisher. Don't get me wrong. But for me, I would probably be looking. I think Abraham has unfortunately played himself out of contention. We've not even mentioned Rashford. And Greenwood as well. I know Greenwood again is probably, and Rashford is more of a a forward that plays out wide. But for me, I've been seriously impressed with Bamford this year. Some of the goals that he scored, those half chances, a couple of the goals against Villa, were superb. And he's had a few like that as well in other games. Not mention Ings, again, great finisher. There's lots of options. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a hard job for Southgate to pick this squad. Really tough. But I do think, and again, it's going back to something we've mentioned in the refereeing discussion, use your common sense. The common sense, for me, says that we play a 4 at the back, a holding midfielder in there, probably then a 3 and a number 10 and a striker up top. That's our strongest setup as a team. And you've got the players there to fit into that system. Don't mess around with a 3 at the back where you've got Kyle Walker playing as one of the 3, in my opinion, although that did work in the World Cup, in fairness. So, but like you said, Charlie, we can't go into a game with, particularly a game against, if we've got Scotland in the group and Czech Republic, if you've got 2 holding midfielders in there like Phillips, and I've got nothing particularly against Phillips, I don't think he's quite at that level. But even a Henderson and a Rice, I don't necessarily think we need both of those in there.
You're sort of just inviting the pressure on yourself to sort of say you can come at us because we're not going to come at you. We're happy to sit here. I think we need to sort of where I was sort of saying at the start of the episode about confidence. If we're going at a team and we sort of show that commitment, put them on the back foot, show them what we're about. I think, realistically, what's the expectations for this Euros? Final, at least, semis?
Maybe I'm an optimist, and like you said, if you've worked at the FA, maybe you're an optimist too, Charlie. But with the players we've got, and I appreciate in a one-off game you can go and lose to a team like Belgium, France, Germany, Italy have got a lot better again in the last couple of years. I think, didn't they qualify? They win all their games, or
I think they may have drew one. But they're back again now after sort of not being in the World Cup.
Completely. But I would like to think that, and the final and the semi-finals are at Wembley, aren't they? And like with the news as well, that hopefully fans are actually going to get in the stadium, you'd like to think that we might be in a positive position because of that. So, I agree with you. I'd like to see us get to the semi-finals. The Croatia game is going to be a difficult one, but again, they're not the team that they were a couple of years ago. I didn't expect us to win that World Cup semi-final, really. When you look at their midfield and their strike force, it's a serious team they had.
It was, and I think going back to that World Cup, I think it was really the first one for me as a proper, say, England fan. I think you get caught up in the hype. I think going into that game, especially for people sort of my age, we've never seen that before. Sort of experience that. So I think even going into this Euros, I think there's a lot more, I'll say, expectations on us. But like you there, I think if we can get to the semis, I think it's us to lose it, due to the fact we'll have potentially the home support behind us. But it's, like I said, I think we can beat any team on our day. I think bar France. If we get France, I think that'll be a very hard game due to the amount, I think even their third team could probably beat our first team. It's ridiculous the amount of talent they have at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the good thing that we're playing Croatia first means we sort of have to go into that game with a good positive team selection, in my opinion, to build some momentum. And hopefully if we can, not even necessarily win the game, but put in a good performance and get a draw, I would still expect us to, really, we should beat Scotland. We really should. I think everyone will be thoroughly depressed if we don't go and beat Scotland. Czech Republic, obviously, they beat us in the qualifier away, but again, I think at home, we should have enough to beat them. But again, they've got the 2 guys that play at West Ham, haven't they? There's Souček. So they're not going to be easy to beat. But I think, you're right. If we can build a bit of momentum, it's amazing how that can continue, I think, into the tournament. Similar to how, if you have a run of results that aren't positive, I hate to say it, Warren, but with Liverpool at the moment, you go on a bad run and they just can't get out of it.
It's like anything with that. It's just too many injuries for us, and we can't cope with like we were talking about the other week, mentality, which probably didn't help as well. And it's just completely ruined him. You look at was it last game or was it one before that? Salah. Normally, that last man, it looked like he was playing right wing back.
Yeah.
But in reality, you know what's going to happen to England? Eric Dyer.
Do you know what? Yes, you're right. I always quite liked Dyer, but again, he's just so inconsistent. Like yesterday, that goal, the first West Ham goal, and the first thing that he's got in his mind is to turn around and start blaming Tanganga. It's just, oh, come on, mate, take some responsibility. And it surprised me really because he's a guy that grew up in Portugal, and you look at, we've not even mentioned Portugal in this discussion. But they've got Bernardo Silva, obviously Ronaldo,
Moutinho, Neves.
Who else?
Ruben Diaz at the back.
Who's the right back at City now as well?
You got João Cancelo on the left, Nelson Semedo, obviously of Wolves on the right, Bernardo Silva.
It's frightening, isn't it?
Jota. Odd. Wolves squad.
Yeah. I think from the prospect,
Portugal might end up wearing a tangerine kit.
I think, like I said there, the prospect of the amount of teams going into it it's an exciting Euros for a lot of teams. Obviously, France will be going in, World Cup holders. Squad is probably getting better. Mbappe, arguably the best player in the world now. So he's going to be sort of having expectations on him. Like I said there, Italy, we've mentioned them. Spain, we haven't really mentioned them much. But
a lot of youth coming through at the moment.
I think Spain are always one of them that you admire the way they play football. Like you said, obviously, there's the tiki-taka style football. It's one of them sort of growing up. I always remember when I went out there when I was like 11 playing them, and we got absolutely played to the park. I think we lost like 11-0 at that level, and it's just you see the way they play from that age is different.
Yeah, and it's a game that the style that they use, or the style, the tiki-taka football that they use, is so suited to international football. I think we've got, the good thing about England is there's an identity to the team now, which I think you're right, Charlie. Is probably, I think you touched on this earlier, it's sort of been lost in the last 6 to 9 months, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But in the year prior to that, where I'm not necessarily one of these to get too drawn into like the Nations League, but when we got to the semi-final, there was an identity that we were playing quite sort of high-tempo football. The win over Spain was a brilliant example of it, when we went 3-0 up in 20 minutes or whatever it was, where we were really playing quite, in their faces, pressing very hard. But actually playing with some pace and some strong movement further up the field, where in the past it's just been, we've had the likes of Andy Carroll up front and Crouch, and it's just diagonal balls all the time, and it's just not effective at international level, and that's been proven by England's performances over the last decade, prior to the last World Cup. But yeah, I'm very positive going into the Euros. I think we've got, as long as we don't have injuries, that's the other thing I guess to consider as well, that every country is going to be hit in some way because of COVID, I think, and player availability, not necessarily because of COVID, but
the longevity.
Yeah, exactly. People are playing Saturday, Tuesday, all through the season, even teams not in European football, so there are going to be some injuries, I think, and having a good rounded squad is going to be, key, I think, for whoever wins the Euros.
You were saying about there's obviously Hendo. I would personally start him. If he's fully fit, I would start him because you look what he does, obviously not so much this year, but he's barking orders all throughout that game.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think, so I agree with you. When I said Rice being the holding midfielder, I'm sort of basing that on form at the moment. Obviously, I know Henderson picked up an injury. I don't think you can go far wrong if you've got players that are successful. The guy is captain the team that won the Champions League, got to a Champions League final the year before. They've gone and won the Premier League. He's a player with real experience, and I think you're right, Warren. He drives the team forward. He might not necessarily be the most talented player in the side, but his passing really underrated.
He knows how to read the game of football. I think that's the thing is obviously he knows he's not I'll say like the most technical player in the squad, but he knows he can read the game better than most, and that's why he's always going to outmatch some players in that pitch.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the example's being proven in Liverpool at the moment. Probably the best player in the Liverpool squad in my eyes is Thiago. Probably the best all-round footballer in the team is Thiago. But for whatever reason, and I'm not one of these people that blames Liverpool's sort of bad form against him as a player, but obviously there's a certain tempo that I think Liverpool had in the last couple of seasons that Thiago has maybe just scaled back to a degree within the team. And I think that adds to that discussion point that actually, Henderson in the team that keeps the tempo going. He's very keen to play a positive pass into, the front three for Liverpool when he can. Means that they're an effective team. And I think you're right, Warren. If he's on form and he's fit, he's got the ability to, hopefully, if England have got the likes of Foden, Maddison, Sterling, Grealish, Sancho, Greenwood, Rashford, whoever it is, you play the ball into them. I'm excited thinking about it. Play the ball into them quickly to do their bit. That should be quite a positive thing for England.
Who's captain for England? Kane.
Kane.
And then he's not the biggest talker, is he?
Have you seen the Spurs documentary on Amazon?
I knew exactly where you were going with that, Charlie. Yeah.
He's a very underrated. People don't see that sort of because he's very, I would say, not really camera shy, but he's not the most vocal on screen. But in that documentary, you see in that squad the respect they have for him. And he's a big character, I think, behind the scenes, and I think a lot of people don't see that. But I can see where you're going. Obviously, I think the big one was obviously when the Sterling and Gomez incident happened. Obviously, he didn't come out and say anything. It was Hendo who had to step up and say something. I can see obviously why people think that, but I think Kane is Southgate's man. He trusts him, so I think every manager has a go-to player, and I think that for Southgate that is Kane.
I don't know what his reason was for putting Kane on corners and free kicks.
That wasn't Southgate, was it? That was
that was Hodgson. Yeah.
Southgate come in after that.
Yeah, I certainly would have been holding some post-mortem on Roy Hodgson after. And I probably shouldn't, because I was a big fan of, I was saying for quite a period of time before he came into the role, I thought Hodgson was probably a good choice as England manager, and unfortunately, but I mean, you look at some of our qualifying whilst he was in post, and actually, really convincing qualifying, and actually England played well in a lot of those games.
Yeah.
whatever happened, whether he overthought things going into tournaments, obviously it just didn't work out for him. And that Iceland game, I've never seen a team implode like that before, ever. Yeah, it just happened to be England, which was rather disappointing. But no, I've watched the documentary, Charlie, and Kane is a big influence in there. I think he's not only is he Southgate's man, I think he's Jose's man as well. There's that whole bit where, wasn't he speaking to Kane when he first came in, and he was saying, I'm a stellar manager and I want to take you to be a stellar striker. And Kane was like, yeah, I'm all for that. Which makes me think the current position for Tottenham means that I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves this summer. Obviously, it's going to take a really big bid coming in. I'm sure you'll be pleased with that as an Arsenal fan.
I was going to say, that was going to be my final question. I think that sort of stuff has been, the last few days. I think there's I saw a video on Twitter yesterday, and it was sort of him in 2017, sort of saying, if I look back in 3 years' time and we've not won anything, he's going to be disappointed. And I think, obviously, I'll say is I'm a very unbiased fan. Tottenham have been better than us for the last 4 or 5 years. And Kane has been a massive reason behind that. But obviously getting to the Champions League final against Liverpool, they haven't looked the same since. I don't know if it knocked them massively in confidence. But they got to that final and they were shocking. They didn't turn up in what capacity ever. It was probably the most boring Champions League final I've ever seen.
Well, it was stupid for them to play Kane when he wasn't even probably 70% fit.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say 70. I'll probably say 60, 50%.
Yeah.
He was ready for that game.
Yeah, and I think both Tottenham and Liverpool to a degree, although Liverpool obviously went on to win the league last season, I think with Tottenham, they've when you look at their squad, aside from probably a couple of players, they've just not invested in the squad since then. No. And I think the same could be said to Liverpool, or about Liverpool to a degree. When you're in charge, you've got to kick on and, not change the team too much, but you've got to find players that complement the way that you play, which I think Thiago could be seen as that sort of stellar signing. But I unfortunately, I don't think he's the player that fits into how Liverpool have played successfully in the last 4 or 5 years.
I think you made the point now. I think when you're on top, you have to keep being on top. I think City are a prime example. When they win the league, they still go out and spend 100, 200 million invested in more competition. And I think I said it to obviously Adil, who's not on this tonight, but obviously he's a massive Liverpool fan as well. And great success for you guys, obviously winning last year, but I think you just awoken a beast in City. I think you could see it in that game, obviously, when you were crowned champions. I think some of the players obviously were probably still hungover from partying. But when I think they put 4 or 5 past you, that was anger. That was, you've just pissed us off now and we're going to come for your title. And you've seen it this season. Obviously, they've gone on to, I think, is it 13 in a row now, 18 in all competitions. They've hit another form that people didn't think they could achieve. We thought we saw the best of City and Pep, and he's now gone and done it again. And I think we'll see more of that. I think City will carry on dominating for a long, long time.
I think the rivalry will be even bigger next season when we can both have like a full fit team. This year it ain't gone away, and it's no surprise really. Hopefully Liverpool will spend, seeing as what's happened, they will spend a bit more next season and hopefully start challenging again. But I see what you mean. Obviously, with City, no matter what, if they start going slumping down, here's the checkbook. Let's write some more.
But this season as well is, you could even say they've been without Aguero. Jesus hasn't been doing nothing. They've obviously Gundogan out of nowhere has become probably better than Aguero in front of goal for the last 6 weeks. But they've done it with a lot of injuries as well. They just seem to find this second gear this year, especially. I think it's a testament to Pep, because I don't think people have paid him enough respect the last 2 years. Everyone was sort of saying he was done after last season. He's come back and he's just proved he is still probably the best manager in the world.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's not fortunate because he's proven that he's a top manager, like you say, Charlie, probably the best manager in the world. The teams that he's managed have obviously been Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Man City. So he has got the financial clout behind him. But the way that you see the players progress through, we've spoken about John Stones throughout, but the way that he has clearly improved as a player in the last 4 or 5 months. Yes, part of that is, a lot of it is down to him and his commitment as a professional to become better. But full well that I'm going to say Klopp then, Guardiola's behind that improvement.
I mean, like I said there as well, obviously he has been, fortunate with the clubs he's managed, but he's been around for a long time now. Obviously, the likes of Barcelona was 2008 when they had the success of winning the 6 in a row. You look at the managers, obviously the likes of Jose Mourinho, who was at the top, isn't really the same anymore. He's sort of been caught out. Obviously, Arsene Wenger was one of them that got caught out over time. Pep just seems to be evolving all the time into sort of make his way and tactics keep working. I don't think there's many managers. Obviously, I think the top managers in the world now, obviously, are the likes of your Klopps and that. But Guardiola, I think, is a testament to him to keep going the way he does.
Yeah, I agree. Quite happy if he turned up at Villa. I can't see it happening.
But I think money's helped that.
Money does come into it in a degree. There's no denying that. But you look at the likes of Barcelona, a lot of that was grown through the academy. Obviously, he was a player who come from La Masia as well. Obviously, don't get me wrong, he was lucky to have the likes of Iniesta, Xavi, Messi and everything. But he then went on to Bayern Munich, turned them into a force again. Obviously, didn't get the Champions League. And I think that's something that is probably a great on him, that he hasn't managed to win the Champions League in the world, obviously without Bayern, without City. But there's no denying the domestic form. He's untouchable.
Yeah, I could not disagree with that at all. I think it'll be interesting to see if he's got another move. I mean, he seems very, very settled at City, actually.
Exactly. I think a lot of people said that he was sort of wanting to be done after City, but now, because he always said he wanted to be done by the time I think he was 50 in management, he didn't see it being a long-term thing. But I think he sort of found a new form of love for it at City. But
it'd be interesting to see if he went again. Not that he has to prove himself, but whether he went to another team again to build a squad. I guess he's managed in Spain, Germany, England. Well, there's probably Italy is the other main league in Europe. Obviously, the French league maybe, but you probably go beyond Monaco and PSG and
Lyon,
Marseille, and there's not much of a challenge there, to be completely honest with you. There might be something at Celtic soon at this rate after the way they've been this year, but I can't see the Scottish League appealing to him.
What was that, Ron? You broke up a little bit there.
Fair enough. PSG lost to Monaco 2-0 last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of them, like, if he does take the next move, I think Italy would be the most sensible. Sort of, you could then say you complete the Grand Slam, which everyone deems as the top 4 is obviously Italy, Germany, Spain and England. But I think what you said there as well, Warren, I think money is a big thing, but you could throw any manager. I think it's sort of saying is everyone says, well, I could walk in and manage City. I don't think you could. It's one of them that these players, these world-class players, need world-class management to get the best out of them. You see the likes of it. I think like for us as well, don't get me wrong, I think Mikel Arteta will become one of the top managers in the world, but at the moment he's not quite there just.
No, I think you're right, and I think I think that is absolutely 100% correct when you talk about world-class managers needing to have world-class players. There's a very good if you go onto YouTube, and there's various interviews that with the England players when Glenn Hoddle was manager, and they were saying that Glenn Hoddle was still like the best player, even when he was sort of 39, 40 managing England. And because he was the best player, he was, even with the England team, and that was actually a really good side in the 98 World Cup when he was managing. Some of the players just couldn't do what he wanted them to do on the pitch. So I think you're right. Coming up with sort of statements to say, could Pep go and manage a championship team and bring them up into the Premier League is just a non-starter, because actually the players aren't there to sort of translate what he wants to be translated onto the pitch.
Unless he's Jay from In Betweeners, which he took Woking up to the champion.
That's true. Yeah, in 5 seasons, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But like I said, it's one of them that, and I think that sort of is the difference between the likes of, obviously, I think last year Chris Wilder got so much respect for what he did with Sheffield United. I think Chris Wilder's I think he was my manager of the year. I put him down last year for what he'd done with them. But over time, this is like if he went on to manage someone, say like City, it wouldn't work. It simply wouldn't work.
No, I agree, and again, the whole Lampard situation at the moment. I guess we probably suggested that because you're a world-class player, it doesn't make you a world-class manager.
No.
I don't think Pep. I might be wrong. I don't know the guy, but I'd imagine if you asked Pep, he would probably say, "I wasn't." I don't get me wrong. He was still a brilliant player. Playing at Barcelona and playing for Spain, you're going to be a decent player, but he's probably not in the elite league of, real top level footballers in the 90s. And with Lampard at the moment, yes, he's a world class manager, but a world class footballer. But I think it takes time for that to happen. There's not many managers that have, like you say, Charlie, with Arteta. I agree. I think Arteta will be one of the better managers in world football within a few years. But it's going to take him time. It's going to take time for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I think Lampard was foolish, really, to go for the Chelsea role, because we all knew if he went on a run of 7 or 8 games where it didn't go well, Abramovich has got a track record of making changes, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I think like you saying there, a lot of players you look. I think for me, some examples, a lot of them are Arsenal ones. Patrick Vieira, not had the best start to his career. I think he's been sacked from a few clubs now. Most notably Thierry Henry. Went to Monaco, went to Arsenal. I think he's now out in America again. And there's a lot of talk at one point him becoming the Arsenal manager, but I can't ever see it happening. Obviously, Thierry Henry, arguably one of the best players ever in the Premier League, got into management. It doesn't work. I think management is one of the hardest aspects of it to get involved in. There's only, I think, certain few that have the ability of doing it.
Yeah, and you have to pick the right team, I think, to align with the progression in your career.
Yeah,
I guess the one that springs to mind that goes slightly against that thought and is working out really well is Gerrard.
Yeah.
I mean, that Rangers appointment, I think he had a little bit of wriggle room, because obviously with what happened to Rangers over the last 10 years, they weren't anticipating success probably this quickly. And if you manage Rangers 10, 15 years ago, where, finishing second is just a disaster to Celtic, whereas they probably had a bit of a buffer for 2 or 3 seasons where they established themselves again. And now, Rangers are, if they're in the Premier League, I think, they would certainly hold their own, in my opinion.
I agree with that. In this season, I think is it 18 points? I think it's clear now.
Yeah.
7 more points to be crowned.
And I think I saw that even in the game, I think they've got the old firm coming up. If they get a draw, they win the league. I think they're still flying in Europe. The other night, they've done well to come back and win 4-3 in the end. There's a good of the game. But I think that sort of comes down to the fact of what you said about Lampard. I think Lampard and Gerrard have always been people that's been compared their whole career. But I think it sort of goes down to, I don't know if it's a respect thing as well, but Gerrard just seems to command something about that Rangers side now that it's hard. I think it sort of comes down to the fact that I think, will Gerrard take the next step? Isn't it? He needs to choose the next club perfectly, because I think if he takes the next step, which I think a lot of people is obviously when Klopp goes, would be going in at Liverpool, I don't know if that's the right decision.
No, and I think probably if I was him, I would look to stay at Rangers probably for another couple of seasons. You can build some success, because the way that they're playing at the moment and the way that Celtic are performing at the moment, I can't. They're going to have such a hangover going into the next season. Even if Lennon does go, I mean, I'm amazed he's still there at Celtic. But even with a new appointment, that's going to take some time to reinvigorate Celtic. So Gerrard should capitalise on that, in my opinion, and win the league 2 or 3 times with Rangers, and then he's built a successful platform to then maybe move to Liverpool. I don't know, but I think probably what you're suggesting is there's an in-between move somewhere in there. I mean, it may even be, again, the people that I work with must get fed up with me when I talk about all these different things. But I thought potentially a next good move for him might be England. A bit left field. I can't see him taking another. For Gerrard, I would say Rangers align with the sort of Villas, Crystal Palace. I'm just trying to think. It's sort of like the 8th to 13th, 14th teams in the Premier League. I can't see him wanting to take a job within that top 6 bracket in the Premier League because of the conflict with Liverpool. So either that leaves probably a move to maybe another European club, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, with the players that England have got, I think England would be a great move for him for maybe, sort of a tournament cycle, as they call it.
Yeah, the 4-year period.
A 4-year period. He'll be maybe mid-40s by that point, and he's got a good CV behind him then to go and take the Liverpool job. Because I agree, that's obviously where he wants to finish. That's where Warren probably wants him to finish, and I'd imagine most of the other Liverpool fans do as well.
I think you can probably correct me if I'm wrong there, Warren, but for me, sort of that Gerrard is your stature, as like he's an icon of your club. For me, it would have been, say, Henry sort of had that success as a manager where he was flying at a club. And I personally wouldn't want him to come in, because if sort of like Lampard, where it goes so wrong, it tarnishes sort of a bit of that legacy. People, obviously, the likes of us who sort of grew up watching, obviously, the likes of Henry, etc., that won't. But the younger fans, etc., when they sort of go, "Oh, who's this Henry?" and you say, "Oh, well, he's an icon, he's a legend," they're going to go, "Well, no, he's not. Look what he done for us." It sort of takes away that specialist side of it to me.
I don't think Gerrard, that's why obviously him going from, he was under 23s manager at Liverpool, and then obviously it progressed to Rangers. I don't think he's in any rush to go there. I expect he definitely wants to go there, but he wants to do it on his own time and for when he thinks he's ready to take that on. Because it's like anything like you just said about Lampard. He's not going to go there. Well, want to skip there straight away to him. Well, obviously doing a bad job.
I know, I think we're saying here that Lampard done a bad job. I don't actually think he did. I think he was a good manager, but at Chelsea, it's like I say, one of them. Abramovich has got that record that you have 2 bad games, you're gone. Even if Gerrard didn't take it, I would like to see Lampard in the England role.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad shout either. I think for England, you're looking for a manager that's going to back the talent in the squad and play the right style of football and the formation that's going to fit the players that England have got. I agree, Charlie. I don't think Lampard's necessarily a bad manager. You hear this stuff that, he was off the Chelsea job and, he couldn't turn it down. Well, he could turn it down. You know, no one put a gun to his head to say, you must go and join Chelsea now. I thought he built a good championship team in Derby. They were very unlucky to lose to Villa. You know, fortunately, from my perspective, Villa won that playoff final. But they were unlucky. Derby had a lot of chances. They could have quite easily have gone up, and you know, I think he could have built a good, you know, initial start to his managerial career. And the problem is now he's tainted with a sacking at Chelsea. Even though I agree, I don't think he necessarily deserved it, but that's Chelsea's style. Whereas probably if he held out a little longer, there would be a Premier League club that would have come in for him, in my opinion. You know, and then I think there are others that are approaching their managerial career more sensibly, whether it's Gerrard, whether it's Rooney, John Terry from a Villa perspective as well. You know, obviously he's got a desire to probably become a number one at some stage, but he's quite happy to sort of sit in the background at Villa at the moment, and probably when the opportunity comes up. I mean, I know there's talk of Bournemouth. It seems that Woodgate's got that until the end of the season now, but you know, Terry's obviously biding his time to try and find the right job. He sure as hell won't go for Chelsea. You know, he's I can't see Terry making that decision based on what's happened with Lampard.
No, I think you know what, Terry would be a good shout for you guys as the next sort of step. He's been learning his trade there.
Yeah.
You know, I think Terry got a lot of stick as a player as well, but I think he's one that I think could command that respect as a manager.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's clearly been England captain, won so many trophies with Chelsea. Quite an underrated footballer. When you talk about footballing centre-backs as well, again, Terry's got this reputation of just heading it and, you know, being a tough man at the back. You know, two-footed player. If you go back and watch a lot of Chelsea matches from years gone by, you know, the guy's strong on either side, you know, played the ball positively into midfield. So I think you're right. He could make a very good manager. Whether that's at Villa or not, I don't know. I think, you know, Dean Smith being a Villa fan means that I think it have to go catastrophically wrong at Villa for him to leave anytime soon. But no, I think again, and actually, you probably do a whole other podcast on this. It's great to see so many of these younger England players or English players actually having the desire to go into management. You know, particularly Rooney. I mean, I would never have thought Rooney would become a manager, but again, when you listen to him speak, he's got authority about him. Again, I've not watched Derby games religiously by any stretch, but you know, I've seen some of the goals. And was it last weekend they had some different corner routines which I thought was, you know, similar to what England took on in the last World Cup with, what was it, the Love Train or what? Where it was created. You know, some really good, you know, innovative thinking in terms of how they're approaching games. And you know, I think that's really good to see that, you know, a player like Rooney is actually going into management.
No, I completely agree with that. I think for this episode, I think we covered more than a wide range of topics.
Got enough content there for a few topics.
But I think that sort of covers this week. And I think it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, not Rob. And I think we'd definitely like to have you back on again. I think there's a lot more we can discuss in depth.
Yeah, love to.
But I think that sort of covers. Anything else you'd like to add, Wazza?
No, nothing.
Good. So obviously,
I've seen Warren speechless.
Obviously, top four.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the Premier League.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I actually had a chat with my mate at work about this today as well. So City to win it, probably by about 10 points as they are at the moment. I think Leicester second. I think they'll continue. I think United third, and then I think it's a shootout between Liverpool, Everton, and Chelsea for fourth. I don't think Villa will get in the top four. No offence, Charlie, I don't think Arsenal will. I'm sure you're not expecting them to now. I don't think Tottenham will either. So I think if I had to put I think Liverpool will get the 4th spot. I think they'll somehow put it together and get over the line. But Chelsea are coming through strongly, and Everton, they might now start to build some confidence after the win at the weekend. But they'll go and lose to Fulham. As they're so inconsistent. So I think if Liverpool can just get a run going, I think they probably will finish second, but it's going to be tough.
Completely agree on that. I think that's pretty much the top 4 I'll go with as well. The rest of the season.
Yeah, I think so. And England to win the Euros.
Good.
Let's be positive about that.
Good. I think that's enough for this week. Obviously, thank you all for watching if you have stayed this far. I think we might add a little sneaky little giveaway in somewhere. I think I've got an idea for the giveaway for this week, I think we might put a little hidden code somewhere in the video at a certain point where they get a bonus entry to entice people to listen to this wonderful episode. But yeah, thank you obviously again for coming on, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'd like to have you on again soon. But obviously next week's episode, we've got another guest on. It's not a football guest for once. It's actually a boxer we got on, an up-and-coming boxer. And Mr. Tom Jones, everyone loves, will be back on again. So we've got a bit of a nice 4 on the podcast for next week. But thank you all next week, and see you.